Yeah. So we saw what is the scope of Disaster Management Act. Okay, and then we said how the act has been transformed into some actions in the form of National Disaster Management Plan 2019. Okay, so we saw some, I was trying to highlight you some major initiatives and major steps that has been said, that has been emphasized under National Disaster Management Plan 2019. Okay, so one thing which I forgot, I should have discussed yesterday, I added in the morning, that there are certain time frame. Okay, when do we do all this? Okay, so we did discuss that there are certain things to be done. Okay, for example, improving understanding, strengthening the disaster risk governance, enhancing preparedness. Okay, so there are certain things that needs to be done, both in terms of policy measures, in terms of capacity building, and so on and so forth. For example, let's say empower the local authority. When this will happen, what is the plan of action, all that. So if you see the National Disaster Management Plan, it says that there are certain things to be done within certain specific time period. Okay, so one is short-term goals, medium-term goals, and or the benchmark, and long-term vision. Okay, so if you see more or less the implementation of these measures in the plan must be completed within a short time, medium time, and long time. Okay, and the short time deadline, whatever that India has envisaged, is 2022, and the medium term, there are certain things that the government of India has said that it will do it by 2027 and 2030 and so on. Okay, so the year 2030 is the end of time frame for all the three post 2015 international agreements: Sendai Framework, SDG goals, and Paris Conference agreement. So all these things, like I was telling you yesterday, these are not only Indian government's initiative, but also it's commonly agreed upon by all the countries in the world. Okay, on for taking specific steps. Okay, for achieving better habitation or better living cities. Okay, so in that way, there are certain plans, or there are certain targets that needs to be achieved by 2022, and in 2027 and 2030 is the time period that India has committed, that by the end of 2030 probably all or most of the things that we have discussed will be in place. Okay, that's the plan of action that the National Disaster Management Plan 2019 envisages. Okay, this is one thing which I thought I should highlight to you before we go to the next section. Okay, the next section is very generic topic where it says disasters, a number of disasters and this occurrence and so on and so forth across the world and country, to again to emphasize or to sensitize how important is the subject, and why there is a need for architects and planners to look at this dimension as well. Okay, generally we talk about other aspects, right? Building comfort, aesthetics, or the character of the buildings and the neighborhoods and so on and so forth, but we we don't really go into the aspects of disaster and how do we manage crisis in architectural terms, right? So that's why this subject is introduced. And also, like I said yesterday, at the end of this course, if you register this in your mind that we have to contribute something for better living in terms of disaster, then the introduction of subject is taken into considerations. Okay, just 1 second. Sorry. So so with that background, I would say that this topic will position our thinking on why the subject is needed. Okay, so if you see, there is one paper on hazard statistics. Okay, it's a combined work by many authors, where they have documented major hazards regions from 1975 to 2001, and based on number of events in the sense number of disasters that has occurred during this 25 years of time. Okay, so if you see statistically, despite large population, Africa is relatively devoid of natural hazards. This is due to the stable tectonic plates the continent has. However, they have a different issue. For example, one of the major issue that they face is the non-availability of water and drought conditions. Okay, so if you see from the other perspective, the frequency of events over the recent for the rest of the world reflects the dominance of climate induced climate as a control and occurrence of natural disaster. So if you see the rest of the world, and particularly since we are focused on India, most of the disaster is related to climate. Okay, so be it cyclone, be it flooding, be it other type of disaster, it is directly related to the climate. Okay, so that's why the in general as well, this statement holds good, that dominance of climate as a control in natural hazard is one of the factors that that is emphasized in rest of the country. Okay, and if you see the number of hazards and number of events that has taken place between this period, okay, so more than this is actually synonymous to cyclones. Tropical cyclone is where we in Indian subcontinent gets. Okay, so more than 1,000 events has occurred in 25 years. More than 1,400, close to 1,350, 330 events or more than that has occurred in terms of cyclone. In terms of flooding, close to 2,500 events has occurred in last 25 in between this time period. Okay, so and again the earthquake that we will be, like I said, one of the focus that we will be reading about is one of the events, one of the major events that has impacted during this time period. Okay, and if you see the trend, number of, this is just to emphasize how we have monitored or how we have recorded these natural disasters over a period of time. Natural hazards have increased in frequency over a time span from around 10 events per year. You kindly remember or give a focus on this word. Around 10 events per year at the beginning of the century to 450 events at the end of the century. Okay, so that means there are two things that we can remember, or there are two things that we can recollect or point to be noted is yes, during the initial stages, let's say in the beginning of the 1900 and during that phase, probably we do not have that much infrastructure to record all these events. That is one thing. We were not that technically equipped, okay, as we are now to record all the events. That is one thing. The second thing is this number, even though it is relatively, not relatively, exponentially lesser than what we face today, right? So there is an exponential increase in number of events. Okay, so the number of events or number of natural hazards that were recorded in the beginning was around 10 only. Now we are recording more than 400 plus such disasters. Okay, so this is also one graph or one point that we should keep in mind, that emphasizes that there is a need for us to spend time research on this topic. Okay, where what we can do to prevent the loss of life and built environment and so on and so forth. Yeah. And this is another thing. Like I said, what is the objective of disaster resilient buildings or disaster resilient planning is to prevent the loss of life, right? So if you see the graph from the same author, I have put the reference here. In the same article, they said that on an average 250,000 people have died each year because of natural hazards. Okay, that is one total number, and of that, famine constitutes to about 50% of it. Okay, so if we exclude that component, 140,000 deaths occur only because of disasters, different types of disasters. There is no specific one. Overall, we are talking about. Okay, so this much loss of life occurs, and being architect and planners and the urban designers or whatever, we will get into the practice. So, what is our role in this to minimize the loss? That's what that is what we should be thinking about. This graph also highlights the other aspect. Okay, unfortunately, but we are all not discussing that. Probably we should have one more subject that talks about famine and what is our role in that. Yeah, what is the do architects have any role to play in this? Yes or no? That is subject to reading and then debates. Okay, so probably those who are trying to read something, probably you may have some subject on seminar, right? This semester or next semester. You can see what is the role of architects in this. Do we have any role to play, or we don't have no role at all? Okay, so that is also another subject that probably that needs more research. Okay, so again, just to highlight other things, the greatest hazard during the 20th century was flooding, one of the most common disaster that we encounter. The next disaster or the next thing that we encounter is earthquake and tropical cyclones, which accounts to the second largest contributor to disaster. Okay, and yeah, this is in numbers. You can see how many deaths has occurred and where was the major events that has taken place. And of this all, the first three, we have specific chapters for flood, specific chapters for earthquake, and specific chapters for cyclone. We will discuss all this as one unit, and probably we will see what planning interventions can be done, what architectural interventions can be done, and so on and so forth. Okay, and this brings to another finding, probably that we should keep in mind. Interestingly, during the first 3 years of 21st century, around 4,000 deaths has occurred because of cold waves. Okay, and in the beginning of the 21st century, okay, we say that the temperature has gone down significantly. Now, currently now in the 2020s and in the last 2 decades, we have been saying that the temperature has gone up. As a result, sea level has risen up. Okay, so this is another thing that we need to keep in mind as well. And there is a whole lot of debate between the numbers that is shown on climate change related stuff versus the actual reality. Okay, that's why, if you remember, I told you in one of the sessions, maybe next week same time, we will see one first documentary that is on the inconvenient truth. I think it is 45 minutes or 55 minutes short documentary. We will see together, and that will give you a picture of what is climate change and how it is recorded and why the subject is discussed. Okay, I'll also highlight you the critics of that particular documentary and what is happening behind the scene. Okay, so this is the one thing that I thought I should also highlight you, because we should keep a balance between the hyped information and versus the reality as well. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is we have to be scientific. Okay, when we say that there is something has happened and there's something is evolving. Okay, so that I'll maybe in the next when we see the documentary, then I will also highlight where we can get wrong and how we can get wrong. Okay, and how these numbers can be manipulated for certain specific reasons. Okay, and whose data should we believe in. Okay, all that we will discuss probably in the when we see the documentary. Okay, so again, just to highlight global disaster scenario distribution of natural disasters. Okay, this is the point that I'm trying to highlight. Number of events, more than 250 events and more. Okay, that has taken place in Indian subcontinent and Asia particularly. Yeah, and distribution of people affected. Again, you can see more number of people are getting affected, have got already affected, and we are getting affected because we are. Yeah, you can see. I don't think we need further explanation why India and China is getting affected. Okay, so more number of people are there, and we are prone to the vulnerabilities. Okay, why why are we prone to this? Okay, last time also I have highlighted, India is the 7th largest country by area and second most populous country in the world. Okay, with more than 1.2 billion people residing. Okay, and if you see India, due to its I think this also I told you, physiographic and climatic condition, is one of the most disaster prone areas in the world, and we have nearly 59% of land mass which is prone to earthquake of moderate to high intensity. Okay, this is nothing. If you take a pie, okay, it's more than half. 60% of land is prone to earthquake. Okay, so that's why this is one of the subject that requires our attention. More than 12% of the land is prone to floods and rivers, and I think this number is slightly lower side given the number of floods that we encounter on day-to-day basis, right? So there are two types of flood that probably the report has not highlighted. One is the flash flood. Okay, the other one is the historical flood. Probably this 12% flood is the historical flood. Okay, that has a tendency. I'll show you at the end of the presentation. There is a map which shows that 50-year floodline map, 100-year floodline map. That means every 100 years there will be a flood. Okay, and that has occurred over a period of time, and it is recorded historically. So this number reflects that historical flood. Okay, of the nearly 7,500 kilometer long coastline, close to 6,000 kilometers of land is prone to cyclones and tsunamis, and this is why one of the topic that we will be reading more is about cyclone. Okay, how the Indian subcontinent, particularly on the Bay of Bengal side, why we are much prone to tropical cyclones. Okay, so we'll see the numbers as we progress. Nearly 68 or 70% of the cultivable land is also prone to drought. These are the numbers that is reflected in the National Disaster Management Plan, okay, 2019, where the thing has been highlighted. Yeah, and these are some statistics. What is the total area and number of rivers that we have, major rivers that we have, forest cover, okay, around 22%, and the coastal line that we have, which are vulnerable to cyclones and other disasters. Okay, these are just some statistics that we should keep in mind, and we should have rough idea about what is it all about. Yeah, so see, if you see, still around 69% of our population is in rural areas. Okay, so only 30% is urbanized. So there is a lot of resources, a lot of energy to be put in, a lot of things has to be done in the rural areas. Okay, so that is another thing that these numbers will highlight, and we should be sensitive about it. Yeah, and last time I have highlighted this. What is the reason for India to be one of the most vulnerable countries? Is because of the population, urbanization, industrialization. Each one of the things, each one of the keywords, I have explained it why it is so. Beside these natural factors discussed earlier, various human-induced activities like increased demographic pressure, deteriorating environmental conditions, deforestation, unscientific development, faulty agricultural practices and grazing, unplanned urbanization, construction of large dams and river channels, etc., are also responsible for accelerated impact and increase in frequency of disasters. Okay, so increased demographic pressure. Okay, we know that probably we have less role to play here. Deteriorating environmental conditions. Here we do have a role to play as an architect, okay, in terms of site selection, where to build, where to not build, and adhering to the regulations put forth, environmental regulations, coastal zone regulations, and all the building building bylaws that we are supposed to follow. Okay, here we do have a role to play, okay, and how we can help in stopping or reducing the degradation of environment. Okay, deforestation, of course, there's a lot of discussions about how we, for example, let's say cutting of trees in sight. Okay, so we have now regulations in place. If you cut one tree, you have to plant 10 times of it somewhere else, and so on and so forth, right? So we have to know about it, and we should religiously follow these terms for the betterment of everyone. Unscientific development. This is what probably I would also like to discuss a bit about. Unscientific development. What do you mean by unscientific development? For example, let's say this is one thing where architects are prone to make mistakes. That is, we don't. What is it? This may be kind of a biased opinion. Sometimes we are not scientific. We, in the sense, architects are not being scientific. We just go by assumptions. We say that this will work fine, but our designs are not subject to scientific scrutiny. Okay, so the point that I would like to highlight is whatever we do should be scientific in nature and should be supported by some evidence. Okay, not hypothetically, just by assumptions we should approach any problem. Okay, particularly this has been neglected in architectural education. Now because of these advancements in tools and science and technology, every aspect of design can be quantified now. Okay, for example, let's say if I say this room is comfortable for me, so we can define what is comfort. Okay, comfort in terms of color, and comfort in terms of temperature, comfort in terms of air movement. What do you mean by comfort? Okay, so those things are now quantifiable, and in fact we can model it and then visualize it as well. Okay, so this point, unscientific development, is also one thing that as an architect also we should be sensitized, is that we should use scientific tools and our design should be scientific. Okay, so it is not just the whims or the wishes of the architect. Okay, so it has to be scientific. The other things, probably faulty agricultural practices, and grazing and so on and so forth. Unplanned urbanization, last time also we discussed what is urbanization and what is deurbanization, migration and out migrations and so on and so forth. There as well, we as an architect have a role to play. Okay, in the context of human vulnerability to disaster, the economically and socially weaker segments of the population are the ones that are most seriously affected. Okay, so this is one of the statement that we should be reading it time and again. Okay, even if we make our cities better in most of the terms, this section, okay, the socially weaker segments of the population, we should give correct or adequate emphasis on that. Okay, I'll give you an example. Maybe this will give you an idea what are we talking about. Who are these economically weaker sections? Okay, here I would like to ask you one question. Maybe if somebody can prompt an answer so that we can quickly move on. We have less time. How many what will be the percentage of economically weaker section in India? Any rough idea, any rough number can somebody give? What is the percentage of population which is economically weak? Any rough number, please?
So maybe 60% or 60 to 70%.
60 to 70% of the population. Okay. And when you say economically weak, can you give a number? What will be the average annual income of that 60-70%? Somebody has sent a text, I guess. Maybe I'm not closing this screen. If you can read out. Yeah. Yes?
It's below 3 lakhs per annum.
Below 3 lakhs per annum. Okay, fine. Okay, fine. I'll give you latest number. I think it came in the last month, January someday. I don't exactly recollect. If a family, I'm talking about not individual. If a family is earning more than 80,000 per month, 80,000 per month. Okay, if a family in India, we are talking in India, if a family of 3 or 4 working, or all 4 are working, or even one is earning, if a family of 4 is earning an income of 80,000 per month, and that family is actually 0.5% rich, top. If you put it in the triangle, a family whose income is more than 80,000 per month, they are actually top 0.5% of India's population. 0.5%, not 1 or 2% also. Okay, that is 0.5% of population. That means only 0.5% of population and above is earning more than this much amount. this much money. Okay, so then you can imagine what will be the bottom line, okay, and what will happen to the other sections. Okay, so there is a huge difference in the economic strata. Okay, so the emphasis or the need for taking them together is very, very crucial. Okay, so that is one thing that we should always remember when we say that we should take care of the economically and socially weaker sections. That doesn't mean there is a very small number. Like somebody said, 60 to 70%. Actually, it is more than 95% are vulnerable. More than 95%. If you go by this number, I would say 97, 98% is vulnerable. Okay, so that's the statistics, actual statistics. So our design or our the role of architects is much beyond this. Okay, so that's one thing we should keep in mind. And also I would like to highlight one more TED talk where I am not planning to discuss it, but I would suggest that you should definitely see where I think I don't remember who from which country one of the architect has spoken in the TED talks, where he says that whom are we serving? Okay, whom are we serving in the sense who architects serve whom? Okay, to which sections of the population and to what sections of population. So here we saw this number around only 5% is earning more than 80,000. In his statistics, he says only 3% of the world's population can afford an architect. Okay, so if that is the case, what will happen to the rest of the 97 who cannot afford an architect? So do we neglect that society separately and we learn and we make money from that 3% of the population, or our intention or our role is much beyond making money? Okay, so that's one thing that you think about it, and let's see how we can contribute to the betterment of the society. Yeah, so other things I would like to highlight, probably will be going in detail, but just to since it is a statistics, I thought I will just highlight all the 4 major disasters that hits Indian subcontinent. First one is cyclone. About 10% of the world's tropical cyclone hits Indian subcontinent. On an average, 5 to 6 tropical cyclones hit every year. Cyclones occur frequently on both sides of the coast. However, the more cyclones occur in Bay of Bengal than Arabian Sea. 1 in 4. Yeah, just 1 in 4 occurs in the Arabian Sea, but 3/4 occurs in the Bay of Bengal. We'll see why and what is the science behind it when we discuss about cyclone. And other things, an analysis of frequency of cyclones on the east and west coast of India between 1800 to 2005 shows that nearly 280 plus cyclone occurred in the east coast. Okay, and coast that has had less severe cyclone of some number. Okay, many have lost life, and this is one of the common disaster that every year we face. Okay, the second thing after the cyclone is floods. Floods affect an average around 7.5 millions of hectares per year, and as per the National Commission on Flood. Okay, and urban flooding is caused by combination of meteorological, hydrological and human factors. Due to land use change, flooding in urban areas can happen very rapidly, and because of all this. Yeah, so this is the first topic. Maybe from the next class, this is the first topic that we'll be reading about is on floods. Okay, the third natural disaster that hits Indian subcontinent is the earthquake. like I said in the initial slide, around almost 60% of the Indian subcontinent is prone to earthquakes. Okay, and there are certain manuals that is integrated with National Building Code as well. We will see what does that manual say and what design precautions that we need to take care when we build buildings. Fourth one, landslide is also one of the other disaster that occurs in Indian subcontinent, primarily on the northern part of the India. Okay, of all the landslide that occurs in the world, 30% is associated with the Himalayan ranges. Okay, so drought is another thing that we also face. Like I said, in the African continent, this is one of the major disaster, but we do face this in Indian subcontinent as well. That is also a cause of concern for us, but we don't have a detailed discussion about drought in this subject. But if you want to know more about it, actually Indian Meteorological Department, there is a separate section that describes what is drought and how do we classify drought and so on and so forth. Yeah, this is a third. Actually, as per the record, 1/3 of India is prone to drought. Okay, so there is a different types of drought that is mentioned in the manuals. Probably, if somebody is interested in reading more about it, you can look for that reference. In this subject, we will be like I've been saying many times, earthquake, floods, and cyclone is what we will be seeing in detail. Yeah. So with that, this is the last component that I have just put here. Hazards in terms of hazard maps of the world and the earth, the Indian subcontinent. Where do we look for these kind of images? Where do we look for the hazard maps of India? And like I said, not all the references are acceptable for us. There are only certain specific references which are acceptable for making decisions. Okay, so one such reference is Building Materials and Technology Promotion Council, BMTPC. They prepare a map, Vulnerability Atlas of India. Okay, so these are the maps that we will be using for discussing further, and it is also part of National Building Code as well. Okay, I have put 2-3 maps that shows, for example, this is in India Climatic Disaster Risk Map. Okay, so this is prepared by BMTPC in 2019. Okay, actually this is third revision, I guess. Yeah, so this shows which part of India is prone to cyclone, prone to floods, drought, hot desert, and other extreme desert conditions, and so on and so forth. This is one map. Then we have a specific map for the earthquake. Okay, this is again all taken from the same BMTPC Vulnerability Atlas of India. Okay, so we will in fact be going details about this maps. How do we read it, and what do you mean by these lines? Okay, and how do we interpret these lines? We will do it when we go to the specific sections. Yeah, this is about earthquake. We do have a map regarding the floods, cyclones, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so this is one about landslides. Yeah, actually I have taken the image, but we do have high quality images. Maybe when we, for example, these are high quality images. We will read it when we talk about earthquake. That time we will see how do we read this how do we interpret this map, okay, and how do we identify which is zone 1, zone 2 from these maps. Yeah, we'll do it later when we take up the subjects. Yeah, so that's it from my side. If you have any questions, you can ask me, otherwise we call it a day.